Welcome to Fairfield Public Access Television, Channel 9. I'm Susan Kessel with co-host Connie Boyer for our show tonight, Opening Fairfield Doors, which is sponsored by the Iowa State Bank and Trust Company, which happens to be where Connie works, and we would again like to thank them for sponsoring their second show.
Thank you. And we would also like to share with you our mission statement, because this is the reason why we're doing these shows. And that is, by opening the doors into the lives of the people and places in our community, we will strive to promote awareness, understanding, and appreciation of one another. So we are going out in the community and talking to interesting people, people that have lived here all their lives, some people that have moved here. Our last show had to do with genealogy and researching your ancestors. It was a great show. Hope you'll watch that one. Today we're here in the home of Curly and Georgette Smith. And I'd like to start, first of all, Curly, with a little bit of history of this house. It's a beautiful house. We're on the south edge of town, I guess. I had to think of my directions. And you said the main part of this house is pretty old. Can you tell us a little bit about this house?
Yes, some friends of ours bought the place quite a number of years ago, and the late 70s, early 80s, Jerry and Marge, Jim Leahy, who had Overland Sheepskin Company. And we visited the place at that time many years ago, but then when we decided to move up here, we didn't even remember, you know. But we wanted to have some acreage. So this property has 10 acres, and this was of the 5 places that had acreage for sale, this was the only one on a paved road. The rest of them were on gravel roads. So we purchased it with I was in construction and real estate in Boulder City, Nevada, and I knew we would add on. So I found out after moving here from some people that were driving down the road one day and stopped and got out to just kept staring at the house, and they were the ones that told me it was built in 1860. So the old portion of the house. But it's really built. You wouldn't dream it was that old. Of course, we've gone through it, and it looks new inside. And then we added this 2,600 feet.
Well, it's really a beautiful home. The last time that my husband and I were here, of course, you gave us a little tour of the house. And I couldn't believe that the old part of the house was that old, because it's in such beautiful shape. It's really a gorgeous home.
I think it's always been a landmark in Fairfield, and it used to be a dairy. And I think my father-in-law might have lived here or worked here in the 40s.
It evidently has quite a history, because it's 139 years old, the old portion, see? And then we have the 3-story barn out there. So we enjoy living here. We only live here in the summer. And we live in the winter in Boulder City, Nevada. That's 23 miles southeast of Las Vegas, Nevada. And I was one of the founding trustees of Maharishi International University from 74 to 79. And being in the construction business, I was asked to come up and look at the structures to see of Old Parsons College to see if they were sound. And so we knew a lot of people, and we moved up here to enjoy our many, many friends in the summer. And we love it here, and we find the people in Iowa are highly intelligent. And all of the people in this town are very nice, all of them.
And what year did you move up here then?
6 years ago.
6 years ago.
6 years ago, and now my body is 77 years old, and I had a heart attack last fall, and I can't even fly in my own airplane. I can't even ride in it because it's non-pressurized. Mm-hmm. So we're going to sell and move back to the Southwest permanently. And so we hate to leave, because we love this place, and we love living here.
I can say Fairfield is going to miss you, your friends and
well, they're not going to miss me, I don't think, nearly as much as we're going to miss them. But I've got just getting acquainted with Susan. I have been doing some business for 6 years with her husband, I find out.
Right, it's a small...
In the insurance. Her husband's in the insurance business, and he has insurance on this property.
So let's go back a little bit further. Now we kind of know your connection to Fairfield and how you got here. And let's go way back and tell us about your growing up? Because I think you have some interesting stories to tell.
Thank you, Connie. I was born in 1922 out on a little farm south of Oklahoma City. And it cost $25, I was told, for me to be born. The doctors made calls at that time, and I was born out on a farm. And then we moved up later to another little farm, and I was reared in total poverty. So that got my attention, and I wanted to get as far away from poverty as I could get. And so, but I was taught honesty and truthfulness, like I find most people are that way, and especially in this area. And the farm people generally are very the salt of the earth type people, and they have values because nature, see, things grow right out of the ground. So my mother was very religious, and my father was honest, and we were taught cleanliness and truthfulness, and so that's the way I grew up. And then, of course, the war came along, and I taught cadets to fly during the war. I learned to fly in 1941. Did
you go to college after high school? Or did you go into the service?
I went to college. I didn't, the war came along before I got a degree. Like about a year getting a degree. I never did ever get a degree. And because after the war, I started my own flying school. Because I had these skills to fly, there was no money in it, but I enjoyed it. I loved it, so see. And so then later on, I became a salesman in Oklahoma City, and sold advertising for years, and then I sold airplanes for years, and then moved to the West selling airplanes, and then moved back to Boulder City and went into real estate and construction business. And there's where I began to do well financially. So it took a very long time. It takes a long time to learn, but I would alert the young people that the fact that there's no elevator to success. You have to take the stairs. And it takes a long time.
How many flights of stairs are there?
It's never ending.
There are quite a few. Of course, I have I wouldn't want to wish poverty on a living soul. There's nothing noble about poverty. But it taught me values, and I wouldn't take for the values that it taught me. And growing up on the farm was a blessing because you become very familiar with the mechanics of nature, and you get to where you love everything. As far as, you know, I don't step on a little ant. I try, even if I can catch a fly in the house, I'll try to catch it and put it outside. Well, this is why I use the statement, the farm people generally have very high values, and they're usually very honest, and they're I'm sure, loan a lot of money to farmers.
Yes, we do. I mean, that's a big portion of the banking around here.
Yes.
And, you know, the industry, or the community itself.
Yes. Well, the farm people have an understanding that's a little different from the city people because of nature itself. They're very close to nature. And everything is, you could say everything is a reflection of God. Everything. That is, and that isn't, and that moves, and that doesn't. Well, the farmers, they may not know to the extent the value of certain things, but that close to nature gives them a feeling and a concern and an awareness that most people living on concrete don't have. I'm not putting anyone down on that statement. I'm just explaining that I came from that right out of the earth almost, you know.
Did you have chores and such when you were a young man?
Oh, man,
Did you have livestock that you had to take care of?
Yes, we all had chores to do. If we hadn't have done it, we wouldn't have made it. And we learned to milk cows and feed the hogs and feed the horses and do the cultivating and the plowing and everything. And we grew our own food. You know, we grew stuff in the summer, and my mother would can it so we could get through the winter. And then I remember telling my mother one time, I said, you know, Mama, we called her Mama back in, you know, Mama and Papa, instead of Mother and Daddy, basically. And I said, sometime I'm going to be wealthy enough to go into a restaurant, which I'd never eaten in a restaurant at that time. I was about 15 years old, and buy anything that I want to eat, even though I'd never seen a menu. And she said, son, you can do it. All you have to do is get yourself an education, and then you can do it. Well, my mother only had an 8th grade education, but she was very wise. So I started the education, and it was probably, for me financially, it was probably a good thing I didn't get a degree. Because then I just got out into the world and started working, and I got into a business finally, the real estate business and construction, where there was some, you know, a little more higher ticket items. And, but I always tried to see in my life how much I could give for the dollar, not how much I could take. And the farm people are generally that way. Even, see, the farm people are being abused right now essentially by the commodity brokers. The commodity brokers are food gamblers. They gamble on food. It's just a sophisticated form of gambling, but they have nothing to do with the production. The farmers are not getting paid. Mm-hmm. I sympathize and empathize very much with the wonderful farm people. We could not live and be alive without them, but they're not getting paid properly.
So what do you think would be the best way to solve that at this point? The farm crisis, so to speak.
They should take all government out of farming. Government should have zero to do with farming at this stage, and let the free market flow, and then the farmers will begin to get, the market adjusts everything. The marketplace is the adjuster. If I were to be, when I was in construction and real estate, if I was trying to get too much for my product, I couldn't sell it. So you have to compete. It's like everything should be, and freedom should be first of everything, just like our school systems are run out of Washington, D.C. This is very, very bad. My wife taught school for the first 7 years we were married. So if you just let people do, as long as you're not offending another person, produce what they want to produce, what they can produce, and get for it what would be a market price. And the people will set the price. If you're too high, won't buy it. Several years ago, say 20 years ago, the Federal Reserve System put a recession on the people in America every 4 years. Well, they've changed some of the banking rules, so they raise the interest rates, and then that kills the construction. When you kill construction, you kill everything, the satellite, carpet, furniture, transportation, everything starts with the family. See? The family. They produce the family, the mother and the father have children, and they have to be fed, clothed, housed, transported. All right. Then the child grows up and goes to producing goods and services. There are only two ways on the planet to produce wealth, just two. If you can tell me more than two, dear Connie, I'll give you $10,000 tomorrow right out of your bank.
I think you ought to think about really.
You deliver products or you deliver services or both. So I've lectured a little bit at the people along these lines, and so I said that's the only way to create wealth. So I had a young man raise his hand one time, and he said, well, how about, because I made the remark, I said, if anyone in this audience can tell me more than those two fundamental ways, I'll give them $10,000. And so this young fellow said, what about if you inherit it? I said, well, see, you didn't create it. Somebody else created it, see?
That's right.
You didn't create it.
So how long did it, I mean, did you figure that out when you were in the construction and real estate business? I mean, that kind of principle and then focused on that?
Yes. Yes. See, when you stop to think, if you want to be financially independent, you have to put in more than 40 hours a week in principle. There are some details that might vary from that. But I used to sell airplanes, and I never sold an airplane to a broke person. They don't have the money, see? So only the wealthy buy airplanes. And a lot of these people were self-made millionaires. Now, what I'm getting ready to say, I'm not suggesting everybody do that because it would be pretty bad. But I have never met a self-made millionaire that worked less than 70 hours a week while they were making the first million. I used to ask them. It was very interesting because I was learning a lot from these wealthy people when I was selling airplanes. I began to get the final education as to just pretty much the principles. And then I'm an avid reader. I've averaged reading probably 25 hours a week for a little over 45 years.
That's incredible.
So
I don't understand where you find the time. You just sleep like 3 or 4 hours a night.
Well, see, knowledge is the only difference between any two people. Knowledge or the application of the knowledge in reality. And there are two fundamental ways to gain knowledge, just two. Experientially and intellectually. And then we have, see, every human on the earth, as long as they're both breathing, any two people are breathing, they have the same amount of time capital. See, I have the exact same amount as you do, I think. If you have a different schedule than 60 seconds in a minute, or 24 hours in a day, I may want to get on it. But so that adds up to 168 hours in a week. And very few people, you can probably ask the next 500 people who don't see this show, how many hours in a week, and if you hear, if one individual says immediately 168, because I've told quite a few, you can say, you know Curly Smith. Because I think I'm the only one who knows that, plus a few thousand I've told, see?
Yeah, I think so.
So obviously your parents awoke in you the curiosity and the drive and the motivation to seek out and do and work hard.
Well, honey, it was a habit.
Right.
See, it's habit. If in America, and I hope that people who listen to this take it, I wouldn't deliberately offend anyone ever with a statement or with an act. To my knowledge, I would never do that. But if you're broke in America, and you're 40 years old or 45 anyway, and if you're broke, when I say broke, I don't mean flat broke. You're spending more than you make. It doesn't make any difference if you make $1 million a day. If you spend it, you're still broke. You just have you're broke at a higher level of income. All right, but if you're broke in America, you have broke habits. It's real simple. And so what you do, you learn to do what the wealthy do if you're going to be wealthy. If you want to be wealthy, you have to get the habits that they have. Saving, investing, producing, delivering. So my parents were disciplinarians. We had to be disciplined or we could not have even lived, figuratively. You young people, and I'm glad you don't, but you have no earthly idea what the word depression meant to those of us who survived it. Unemployment was 36, 38% all over America.
I do feel like my parents instilled that in me because I learned to go without.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I'm sure. How old are your parents' bodies?
86 and...
Fantastic.
And
they understand. They can explain to you exactly what I'm explaining about the depression.
I've heard it all. I lived it all. I hoard stuff because they instilled that in me.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So we had to do our chores every day, and then we had to walk to school. We had to walk back and forth to school, and there were years that when I was a kid on the farm, we didn't have an automobile. We just drove mules in a wagon. I even drove my mother when I was 10 years old. I could stand on a box and harness our mules, because I had 2 older brothers and they didn't want to go to church. Well, I wanted to go. My mother wanted to go to church, and so I'd harness some mules and drive 4 miles to town in a wagon to go to church every Sunday. Rain or snow or wind, it doesn't hot, it doesn't make any difference. We did that. I did. And so that was instilled in me. And I wanted, that was a bad life. You know, I'm talking about, being broke is tough. Being wealthy is not nearly that tough. You know, being substantial.
I think it would be neat to get you together with this young man that his parents moved to Martinsburg or somewhere, and he rode his bike. He got up at like 4 in the morning and rode his bike every day to school this past year so he could finish.
Good.
To Fairfield?
Yes. Like 40 miles every day and back.
Incredible.
This year, Gene Greco did a story in the Tacoma Courier about him.
That is
It was
incredible.
Amazing, and for you to get a hold of him and talk to him,
You
because
send him to see me.
he has such incredible discipline and drive and fortitude right now.
That's what it takes. See, discipline, it takes discipline to succeed at anything. You have to have discipline as a fundamental, or you'll never succeed at anything. If you're an artist, you have to have discipline to paint it. If you're a teacher, you have to learn to teach. You have to read the books and know what they say yourself if you're going to teach what's in the books. And then if you're going to become wealthy, you have to deliver the products and or services. And so then you gather around you, after you get far enough ahead, some people that are willing to help you, that you pay well. You pay people to do that, see? And then you're totally honest. Honesty and truthfulness are the basis of all good character. Any departure from honesty and truthfulness, then you've got problems with that individual, some way, somehow, sometime. So this should be taught. Look at
Do you think that's lacking today?
Oh,
I
of
think
course,
it is.
absolutely. Look at our president. He set such an incredible example of what people shouldn't do.
And then for it all to just
Yes.
be look aside.
Looking back, I've had a very incredible life, including poverty, for the values I learned and for the discipline. I have one child. Her body will be 38 years old next month. But I used to paddle her practically every day, but I would give her my word that I would discipline her if she disobeyed her mother. All right, but when she was about 6 or 7 years old, where she could understand it, I explained, I said, her name's Christy. I said, Christy, I'm gonna have to discipline you because when you break the regulations, because I have to make you strong. Since you're a woman, I'll have to make you at least 5 times as strong as a man, because you've got some male chauvinists in this world that will be harsh with a woman simply because of your gender. Well, I don't appreciate that. And so I told my daughter, I said, when you get into the businesses, you will find out exactly when you're grown what I'm talking about. And you'll be able to handle yourself. Well, she can.
What does she do?
Well, her husband's in real estate, and she owned a motel, and now she owns a car wash, and she's getting ready to put in a laundromat in Cedar City, Utah. They moved up there last year. But her body will be 38, and she became worth $1 million just before she was 30, when she was 29. And she was working for a company called Mark Air, an airline in Anchorage, Alaska. And see, it's pretty simple to get ahead in corporations. All you have to do is do more than you're paid to do. Do more than you're paid to do. Now, if the person you're working from doesn't remunerate you for this additional work that you do over time, then you go to work for somebody that will.
Right, right.
See, but when I'm teaching young people, I say always do more than you're paid to do. And it wipes people out.
Well, I grew up with that too.
Of course you did. You wouldn't be here, neither would Connie. See, even though you're getting paid by somebody to do this, you still, if you weren't doing it and if you didn't have the additional energy to do it, And if you weren't articulate, you wouldn't be doing it. See?
That's something interesting that I can tell my kids. I mean, I've never thought about that myself, even though I would say I think I practice that. But it's interesting, I have talked with a very successful accounting firm, not here in Fairfield, but a firm that the bank does business with, and every one of the individuals that I contact and have contact with are very professional, and I know they're working more than 40 hours. And one gentleman remarked to me once, he said, you know, it's really hard to find kids out of college these days that want to put in more than 40 hours. They want, you know,
to work
the big bucks,
minimum and
get out of here at 40 hours,
and
yeah, work the minimum, get the most. And he said it's a real challenge to find real leaders, real workers.
Well, that's absolutely the case, Connie. And honey, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out how you got to be vice president of that bank. I know exactly how you did it, not the exact movements, but I know the exact principle. And you know that what I've said, that's what you've done in principle. You have put in more than 40 hours a week in principle. And a lot of times a person doesn't realize. I asked Earl Kaplan, he's a friend of mine, has books or funds, mega millionaire. We've been friends for years, and so he came over to see me a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago, and we were discussing. He comes see us once in a while. He came see me in Boulder City in February, because I was recovering from the bad heart. And I said to him, Earl, before you made your first million, how many hours a week did you work? And he said, I get up about 4, and he said, I feed the children, and then this, so and so, and I take them to work. I mean, I take them to school, and then I go to the office, and let's see. He's kind of mumbling to himself. He said, well, at least 60 hours. And I said, well, I'm pretty well adding that stuff up as you go. I said, I'm finding that a lot of the stuff that you did, you didn't think it was work. You didn't consider it to be work at all. I said, but from what I said, did you work on Sunday? He said, Sunday evening. I said, tell me that. He said, well, I go to work at 7 in the evening. I'd get home about 11. Did you work on Saturday? Oh, yeah, I worked all day Saturday. Now, I'm not suggesting that you should maybe put in that much time. People do not plan to fail. They fail to plan hardly anything in their lives. But this young man who rides the bicycle, you should send him to see me. I give this knowledge away. I can teach anyone how to be wealthy, but they have to do it.
Well, I think he could after what he's done already.
Yes, see, and he probably would, but if you just teach him a few, I can tell him where very quickly to find information. See, that will put...
I know when my husband Pat, when he started with insurance, he made the decision, he knew what he had to do, he worked day and night. We went without for like 15 years, nothing, you know, no TV, no washer dryer.
Well, I'm curious about one principle, particularly that religions or churches promote, and that is tithing. How does that fit into becoming wealthy, do you think?
See, everything should be thought of as giving. Giving is the secret, not taking. No. See, every human on the earth is seeking two fundamental things, exactly the same. But if they haven't thought about it, I put this on the chalkboard. You're seeking more and more happiness. Shake your head, yes. And you're seeking more and more security. Shake your head, yes.
I think that's true.
And so is Susan. Shake your head. And so is Richard running the camera. And so is every other person on the earth. Now, I have lectured in front of what numbers of people over the many years. And I asked them, I said, let me see if I can figure out what all you people are seeking. Is it more and more happiness? Shake your head, yes, and no head's ever gone this way. Never, 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 not one. Regardless of how happy you may be, if there is a possibility of more, you would go for it immediately, wouldn't you, Susan?
Sure.
And the intelligent know that instantly. Boy, they'll say, absolutely. Instantly, everyone knows that they'll go for more happiness. Okay. So that's my four-finger lecture. We rest at night. Why do we rest? So we can act tomorrow. Why do we act? So we can achieve. Why do we achieve? For more happiness and more security. They're both found in achievement. If you leave achievement out of a person's life, it's like this young man rides the bike and gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning. He'll be a very happily turned individual. A very happily turned. The tendency is to be happy, you know, and look at the positive side. He won't be morose and glum and, you know, have to go to sleep while you're talking to him. No, he'll be very active. This person will. The high achievers, regardless of what they know in principle of what we're talking about, they're happily turned. The high achievers are always happily turned. The low achievers are always dissatisfied. So you can't take out achievement. Rest for action, action for achievement, and achievement for more happiness and more security. That's the way life evolves. Evolve means, evolution means change, and the direction is always towards more. More happiness, more wealth, more harmony, more love, more patience, more energy, more of everything, see?
And what, Connie, what you were saying about the tithing, I never say that right. I've always found that the more you give, the more you end up getting.
That's correct. I'm very glad that...
In any aspect, whether it's a relationship or monetary or anything, the more you give, it seems like it turns around and comes back to you
many
threefold.
Times. Fold over, any time.
Yeah.
See, tithing is fine, but it doesn't have to be exactly 10%. It can be 10%. I have a real good friend of mine that makes more than $500,000 a year in this town, and he tithes very religiously, 10% of everything. He gives it away. Mm-hmm. Well, sometimes we might give 10% and sometimes I don't, but we're always giving. We write numerous checks every month and giving to certain areas of concern, and I would like to be able to write $1 million a day and give it away to areas where it will uplift society. You normally don't give individuals money, in principle. There'd be some exceptions, and I'm asked for money at least an average of at least 5 times a week through the mail. I'm on everybody's list. But once you give a little here and here and here, mm-hmm. then you're on a list and they sell the list. But you see, when you think about giving the Iowa State Bank, not money, time, when they want you to do something in the evening, maybe we'll say hypothetically an employee situation. Mm-hmm. Well, you do this and you're not going to be expected to be paid. You're an executive. So you do stuff like that, right?
Yep.
See, but people don't think about that they're giving, but you're giving to your fellow man, always. You girls are giving now when we're talking. So giving is the fundamental basis of getting. It's exactly like Susan says. Giving is the basis of getting. If you don't give the delivery of the products and services, even though you're being paid, see the principle. See, the principle works in everything. Principles never change. Details change every few minutes, even in the same industry, from one person to another. I don't teach in details, but I teach in principles, in principle. So those are some of the things that I think are very, very valuable that young people see. When the parent doesn't know how to teach the children, then what do you think is going to happen to the children? They have no prayer of being anything but going up like a weed. So as the society is spiraling downward in America right now, Clinton going over the routine, the Lewinsky matter was the thing that tripped him. That's the only thing that tripped him up, but the people didn't want him thrown out. Well, that's what's frightening to me. Because down the spiral goes when corruption, lying, cheating, stealing, robbing, raping, demeaning people. No, just think, and that's by the top person in America, the so-called, the president. What do you think the little kids are thinking? Because they've seen it on television, they've heard it. All right, so then all of this is okay. If it's okay to the president, Mother, I should be able to get away with it. I should be able to do it. That's what they think, regardless of what you say. See, so when you live in when you have such incredible influence, your responsibility is much greater. Always, always.
What an opportunity to set an example.
Exactly.
That's what I've thought too.
That could have been set.
Particularly about, well, anybody that's in that light. Movie stars, rock stars, all those kinds of things. That's what I've always said too.
They do have the opportunity to reach out and set examples.
Absolutely. And they've got this great opportunity, and they have a lot of responsibility. And to control that, and like you say, use it and be disciplined about it. And one question I have for you regarding discipline, you said how many hours a week do you read?
Well, now I read probably 30, probably.
Okay.
But over 45 years, I disciplined myself.
Do you keep to a tight schedule every day? Okay, between 7 and 9 I read, and between this and this I do something else?
What I do, I get up every morning at 6 a.m. and because I can't sleep beyond that anyway. I go to bed at night at 10 since I had the heart problem. I used to go to bed around 12. All right, so I read every morning, an hour generally or more, 2, sometimes 3. And then I'll read some in the evening, generally. And if I'm getting on a book and I really want to knock it out, I'll read that in 2 days or 3 days. I'll read through the day and knock it out if it's very interesting. And we spend several $100s a year on books, see? Like if you recommended a book to me, I don't read fiction, never.
I don't either.
I read, and I try to read the enlightened beings. I try to read as much as possible by men that were enlightened. Like Maharishi Mahesh Yogi is an enlightened individual. Then a fellow by the name of Harold W. Percival, who died in 1953 at age 85, he was enlightened. And then James Allen. So here's a book by Mr. Percival, Democracy is Self-Government. I think James Allen, who was an Englishman, I think he was enlightened. I've read this over 100 times in the past, well over 100 times. It's 60.
James Allen, is he you said he's English.
He was English. He was born in 1854 and died in 1912. Then this little book by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and he wrote this book, and it's practically worn out, The Science of Being and Art of Living. And this is his handwriting in here. He gave it in 1967. He came to my home in Boulder City, Nevada. And this is Maharishi's handwriting. Well, see, I mark my books up because then I can go back through them quite rapidly. But an enlightened being, you cannot read them rapidly. I say that it is very difficult for an enlightened being to dumb down enough that you and I can understand it. And so you've got to read it and reread it and read it and reread it.
Now I have an excuse.
And it's like Christ. See, Christ, that great teacher, was enlightened. An enlightened being is divine. They're divine. See, in other words, they're nothing but love and knowledge. Love and knowledge. And so there's so few ever. I know one, Maharishi. He's the only enlightened being that I know on the planet. I'm sure there would be a few more, but I have no idea who they would be. I don't know of another one that's living. So these great teachers, just like this book, Democracy is Self-Government. And there's some friends of mine gave me that little statue you see there of Hermes, called the Flying Mercury. All right, this is the base, the head thrown back with the breath coming, and then he describes the spoken word. Just that one page will blow you into the next area code. Just the knowledge on this one page. It's incredible. But knowledge, in my view, is the most precious of all commodities. See, they can take your money away, but they can't take your knowledge away unless they kill you. See? So knowledge is the most precious. Now, if a person wants to revolutionize, here's life again. We think, and then we act, and then we get circumstances, results. There's only one way to change the results, and that's gain more knowledge. And, you know, assuming that you're going to put some of that knowledge to work. Mm-hmm. So, and I've only had maybe 10 people in my lifetime do this. I started on a program of reading on myself when my body was 31 years old. 32 years old, 1954. I figured out that when I was a salesman in Oklahoma City, I figured out that when I'd buy a book about once a year, I was pretty lazy. And on salesmanship, and I'd read this book, and my sales would go up for about a month or two, and then I'd level off, sort of, you know, I'd get lazy again a little bit. All right, so I figured it out. I was trying to figure out how I could do better financially. And no one pays any attention in general to anything until their body is past 30 anyway. Between 30 and 34, the
I think that's true. I think I'll agree with that statement.
See? So it's so interesting to talk to you beautiful girls. You know, you're so vibrant and you have so much knowledge yourself, and it's just sweet to talk to you. And sometime if you have somebody wants to put me, I put a lecture on the chalkboard. And it's very, see, the reading you can hear, and then you can also see. So you've got two senses. See, people only in reality have 4 senses. We call it 5, but you have, your senses are above your shoulders. Taste, smell, sight, and hearing. Touch is called a sense, but it's not run by an organ, see?
Yeah.
See, so then these 4 senses are hooked to the nature. Earth, water, air, and fire elements. So it's almost impossible to get out of the grip of nature. It's almost impossible. But see, knowledge is so precious. It's incredible. Well, but all I wanted to do, I started with the idea of just to make more money. I was a salesman. I was making at the time about $12,000 a year. This was 1953, late 53. Well, at that time, the 12,000 in 53 would probably be equivalent to 50 or 80,000, maybe today, maybe even 100,000. So, well, we'd get along okay, but that didn't satisfy me. And so I thought, well, I'll fake myself out as a figure of speech. I'll just read every day instead of, you know, once a year, the book, you know. And so that's what I did. I started getting up 1 hour earlier every morning, and I'd read for 1 hour by the clock.
At work?
Man, oh man, I increased my income 30% the first year. And I started March the 1st, 1954. I bought a book called Secrets of Closing Sales by Charles Roth, R-O-T-H. He tells you 7 techniques of closing a sale. Well, no one could use all 7. And the natural salesman, even if they're literate, would use 3. They'd figure those out. But even so, if you could begin to use 4 or 5, well, you can do better. Well, so I'd take ideas out of this book. I started reading it March 1st, 1954. And I swore to myself I would do this program for 1 year. Well, I did it for 18 months before I finally quit. But I didn't know what it would do for me exactly, but I had a good idea. And it put me in the habit of reading. And so this is when I started, see. And it just revolutionized my entire life. But within 2 weeks after studying the financial, trying to make more money, I slipped into metaphysics. And of course, I had always had a great love of God, but I began to read metaphysics, and now that's about all I read. I haven't read the financial stuff in years.
Oh, really?
No, I never read that.
And do you watch TV at all?
Oh yeah, I watch TV. I watch TV. I watch the news. I watch the Factor, the O'Reilly Factor, every evening at 7 to 8, 5 days a week, and I try to pick up the news. Try to at least once a day, for 30 minutes or so. It's very disheartening, the news today. What's happening, you know. I'm not scared about it, but my body is also 77. If I was young as you girls, I'd probably be a little bit concerned, a little bit more concerned.
If you think about it a lot, right, it can overwhelm you.
Yeah, you can't afford to let the negativity coming from the media, and they thrive on negativity. That's the only thing it sells. So you're not going to have very many people hear this little session that we're doing now, because it's not going to be that interesting to people. You know, they want the violence and the killing and read about the murderers and the shootings and on and on and on.
And we do try and keep FPAC very positive and uplifting and cover community positive, and that's what Connie and I are trying to do, is reach out.
You are. I think it's wonderful. See, the principle that you're operating to me is wonderful, because you're trying to give and trying to make the more cohesiveness in the community. See, I do not mind what anyone believes.
Right.
That doesn't affect me. I think it's fine. I never try to change a person's belief. I will try to, only thing that I can do is inspire somebody.
To be a better person.
I just can inspire somebody maybe to do something on their own. If they want to learn to do something like the kid riding the bike, send him over. I have taught several people, at least 10 in my lifetime, to become millionaires if they use the principles. See, principles are the same. They never die. They're the same. They don't change. The true principles don't change. So to me, life is very, very interesting. And since I moved up here in the summer, I have quite a number of faculty from the university come out to see me periodically, and quite a number of PhDs and so on. And people think, see, how can you separate your business integrity and honesty from your personal integrity and honesty? Some people think you can do that. No. You're either honest or you're not. And if you're honest with yourself, you can't be dishonest with me, and vice versa. If I'm honest with myself, in other words, if I try to fake myself out, I can maybe fake you out. But if I'm honest with myself, I cannot be dishonest with you. It's impossible. See? So if you're honest and truthful, you end up with strong character. Very strong. It's real. See, life is very simple, but people try to complicate it. But life is actually very simple. You picked up habits. Some person here yesterday, I have a lot of company, or through, you know, sometimes there'll be 3 or 4 people coming a day, and other days there won't be anybody, but I've got people waiting now to see me, just to visit like you all, and I love it. It's wonderful. But I asked yesterday, I said, well, the person came and visited with me, and I said, well, what are you doing? And they told me, and I said, well, have you been, and they were very unhappy. He even made the remark, he said, I'm depressed, very depressed. And I said, well, no one can bring you out of depression but you. No one on the earth. It's impossible. I said, so what are you doing in the way of work? He said, well, I'm not doing hardly anything. I said, that's what I have, good idea. I said, what I would do, he's trying to get a PhD, and he's a little over 50 years old. I said, what I would do, I would go to work if I had to flip, I'd go to work for McDonald's, even with a master's degree. I said, because then that achievement you'll begin to achieve will bring you out of your depression. So, and it's just like a strong man can't help a weak man unless the weak man is willing to help himself. It's impossible. See? So when government tries to be the answer to all things, be the nanny to all people, it's not a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work that way.
And that's a great principle for our children, is to help them, support them,
exactly.
and while they achieve. And they will become stronger, etc. And coming back to the TV issue, I mean, that's one reason I asked about TV, is because I saw a huge difference in my kids when they were in grade school. They come home and turn on TV and watch cartoons or whatever. And I finally said, okay, no more. No more TV until 7 o'clock at night. Homework has to be done. Chores have to be done. And, you know, they kicked and screamed a little bit at first. But let me tell you, they were different kids.
Absolutely.
When the TV was taken away from them.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I know some families that don't have TV in their house. Well, they've got a TV and a VCR, but they don't have cable. So all they watch is, you know, selected videos that they rent. And, you know, I think if I had children again, the TV would be like major off limits.
See, we're all learning all the time. I continue to learn. I expect to learn as long as I'm conscious and have normal intelligence. All right. But I was going to tell you this little story. See, because you're teaching them discipline, which makes them stronger, just like I was telling you about my daughter. See, she's strong as an elephant. I don't mean with muscles. I mean, no one can knock her down off her feet, and she can protect herself very quickly from the vituperation coming from a man or anything, see. So even though she's very delightful and very gentle and very sweet and very spiritual. But last year, I had a very dear friend here, Brenda and John Narducci. Well, Jesse is one of these artist-type kids, and he's always in trouble. Not heavy trouble. He's the sweetest kid, and he's bright as the shining sun. And then Jordan is the little guy. He was about 13 at the time. Bright, man. He's brilliant. And then they had a boy named Philippe Henrik from France that was staying with them. And so Jesse and Jordan were getting a little too much rambunctious and Brenda told me one day, she said, Curly, 2 years before she had sent the older boy over here on teaching 1 hour on Sunday night. And so she came to me one day and she came by and she said, Curly, if you don't mind, she said, I've told my children, I'm going to make a rule and you're going to have to go for it. Either I'm going to take you to church every Sunday or you're going to have to go listen to Curly 1 hour on Sunday. So they said, well, I'll choose Curly. And so I would teach them every 1 hour. All right, and I made them show up on time. The first time they were late because they got lost coming from Iowa City, the older kid with Philippe. But John called me, he said, Curly, they're going to be about 15 minutes late. So I let them come in, and I went upstairs, and I told them, I said, now boys, the two little boys, Jordan's 13, Jesse is 15 at the time, he's now 16. And I said, your dad called, and so I was expecting, because you said you got lost, but I said, now next Sunday, you'd better be here 2 minutes till 7 minimum, because I said, if you come 2 minutes after 7, the door will be locked. I won't let you in. And I said, I have my house rules, and you'll go by these rules. And I said, I hope that your parents all have house rules, see? And I said, why? Why would the parents have house rules? I said, it's exactly like a bird. You're going to fly the nest sometime, and the discipline and treating people like you'd like to be treated is going to make you much stronger and much easier to become successful. I said, you're thinking that they're down on you because they give you a few things you have to do. But I said, when you're older, you'll be grateful that they did because you'll know how to do something. Right. You'll know how to take care of yourself. Absolutely. So, anyway.
Well, I have one other question here. I'm going to totally turn the subject around because of your knowledge and the immense reading that you've done over the years, and you mentioned your body is how many years old?
77.
And as long as I've known Curly, which hasn't been really that long, he tells me that his body is so many years old. So we know, or we can kind of read between the lines and bring in, reincarnation here.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm curious because, you know, there's kind of, I don't want to say, you know, there's different beliefs about reincarnation. Some people don't believe it, some people do believe it. And I was told once that reincarnation used to be part of Christianity, but somewhere along the way it was taken out for political reasons.
That's correct.
And my husband's been on the internet to try to find that exactly, where it was.
You find it?
And so do you have the answer to that?
Ask me the question. Yes, I have the answer to that.
Was reincarnation belief taken out of Christianity, as we know Western Christianity?
Reincarnation was taught by the Catholic Church until 320 AD. Then they had what would be called, what we call now, the Ecumenical Council, the Council of the Cardinals. Go to Rome, you know, ever so often. I don't know the frequency. And they go over all these things. So they taught it. In 320 AD, they decided, the Council of Cardinals and the Pope decided to table that knowledge. Because seemingly, the people were saying, well, I'll be good next life. So I'll have all the fun I want to in this life as a figure, you know. All right, now, a priest, Mother Olson, you know who Mother Olson is, a lady, it's called Mother Olson, Helena Olson from Los Angeles. We're good friends, and she was Catholic. And her priest in Los Angeles came over to see her one day, and when Maharishi went around the earth once a year for 10 years, he stayed in their home, in Roland and Helena Olson's home. Sometimes, one time he stayed 7 months out of 1 year. He lived there for nothing, and they took care of him and, you know, fed him and everything. And so her priest came over because she hadn't been in the church for 2 or 3 weeks. And so he called her, and because they were real close friends, her priest. Helen, or he called her Helen. Her name was Helena. He said, may I come over to see you? And she, yeah, sure. So she came over, and he said, well, I haven't seen you in church in 3 or 4 weeks. He said, this fellow Maharishi must be here. She said, that's right, he's here. And he said, well, Helen, why do you follow this Indian fellow? I said, you know that he believes in reincarnation. And she said, yes, that's true. He does. He doesn't believe in it. He knows it. He knows it. The priest said, oh, Helen, you know better than that. What are you talking about? And so she said, Father, we have the largest Catholic library in the United States right here in this town, Los Angeles. And if you go down and hunt long enough, you are going to find exactly what I'm saying, that our church taught it to 320 AD. He said, well, I'll, you know, he didn't believe it. And so about 2 months he called, and his voice was real shaky and quivering. And he came over, and she said he was white as a sheet, and she thought he was having a heart attack. And he said, I found it. It's exactly what you said. All right, that doesn't make it so, that thought.
True.
But it's in the Bible. Christ doing the speaking, I know of 3 places. 11th chapter of Matthew, where he was talking about John the Baptist, had been Elias in this past life. 17th chapter of Matthew, King James Version of the Bible, and Revelation 3:12. When you shall go out no more. Okay, now there is a book. There's over 160 pages. Tells you in finite, incredible detail about reincarnation. We've all been everything. You girls have been male, I've been female. Where do you think the gays and the lesbians come from? They're born that way. They should have stayed in the closet, but they can't help it. All right. So this book is called Thinking and Destiny. T-H-I-N-K-I-N-G and Destiny, D-E-S-T-I-N-Y, by Harold W. Percival. It's over 1,000 pages, but there are 160-some pages. And see, I have found, for example, from 5 different sources that the earth is hollow. Well, the scientists say that it's molten, that the core is molten. No, beings live inside of the earth, and they're humanoid, and they're far more advanced than we are. See, I found this from 5 different sources in 45 years, and I wasn't looking, I was just reading all this material from essentially a lot of them. Of course, there are not too many enlightened beings, like I've said, and I'm not saying that those people, one of them was enlightened, Mr. Percival was enlightened. So you see the knowledge, and then the fear goes away. See, myself, the self, the I, that the religious people, and that's beautiful, I have no question, would be called the soul. Is never born and never dies. The soul is never born, the self. The bodies come and go. Same self. And then the memory is blocked for birth. You don't remember that this is the only life you remember, right, Susan? This is the only life you remember, isn't it?
Most of the time.
Yeah. Well, in principle.
Right. Sometimes I think I have deja vu or something.
Well, you do. Okay, if you do. See? Yeah, people say, well, they think, oh, I've seen this before, I've been here. Yeah, they have. I never did ever have that experience. I know I was killed in World War I. I was a pilot then, and the infantry was hunting me, killed me under a bridge, but I had a dream, and it took me, I was 51 years old. I wasn't trying to figure it out, but I finally got the answer on that through all my studies, see? So, and it's not against, you know, people don't have to believe it. I don't, right. See, I could care less what people believe. You're wasting your time if you're trying to, you know, don't confuse me with the facts. My mind's already made up. It's like we have a flat earth society in either Ireland or England. They think the earth is flat. They think that they think that the moonshot of Neil Armstrong, they think that we faked that. And they think the earth is flat. Well, from satellites I've seen on television, that earth looks as round as a marble to me. So belief doesn't change anything, excepting what one does about their belief. See, this is why I never try to change a person's belief. I say, I'll give you some knowledge, but you have to do any changing. If you want to change something, you're going to change it from your side, not my side, just because I'm saying it. No. And so, when you begin to go for knowledge of the self, you begin to gain knowledge of everything. I'm telling you. It's real simple. But when you have all biases and all holding on to everything, and my belief is the only thing, and yours is wrong, and you're crazy, you know, that's okay if people won't believe that. It's okay to suffer. To me, it's not okay to suffer.
Well, it's great when people can be accepting and non-judgmental of other people's beliefs and just go, okay, that's fine.
That's right.
I haven't had that experience, I haven't read that, I don't know, whatever the case is. You know, kind of like this reincarnation thing. You know, it's been kind of a question in my mind for years, and you know, and I hear different sides, and you know, and it kind of was so interesting to me when somebody said, well, you know, it used to be in Christianity as we know it today, you know, and I thought, well, that's interesting. Where is it? I want to find it. I want to read it, you know. So,
well, if you want to...
now I know where to look.
You look at the 11th, say this, talking about John the Baptist. Herod had his head cut off. 11th chapter of Matthew, in the red letter edition, where Christ is supposed to be doing the speaking, and he probably was. 17th chapter of Matthew, the only 2 times in the 4 Gospels. And then in Revelation's 3rd chapter, 12th verse, he says, I'll make you a pillar in my God, and ye shall go out no more. See, once you become enlightened, you don't come back into the flesh body. But every time you die, you're going to be reborn. Every time you're reborn, you're going to die. The body. The self never dies. Never dies. But tendencies come over. Tendencies, not memory. When you get very far advanced, then Christ, for example, Maharishi, they can look back as Percival, these enlightened beings, after they live long, they can look back as far ahead or whatever as they want to. Maharishi was asked one time in 1968 at Squaw Valley, he said, Maharishi, why can't we remember any past lives? He said, no. He said, by the grace of God, the memory is blocked for birth. And they said, well, would you ever get to a position where you look back at your past life? He said, yes. But he said, you could also look forward and you could do something about changing that. So then they said, well, what do you mean? He said, and he laughed. And he made sort of a joke. He said, well, if you were going to ride a jet to New York and you realized it was going to crash, you wouldn't get on it.
Well, you know, thinking of past lives, if in fact there are, you know, we've all had painful experiences in our current life. Shoot, we wouldn't want to remember all past lives and more painful experiences.
That's right.
You know, one lifetime is enough.
See, the suffering is generally enough for each of us in degrees. This life. Well, this is the best life you've had. Whether you're rich or whether you're poor, this is the best one you've had. Through the process of evolution, see, the evolution means change, and direction is always towards more energy, more consciousness, more love, everything. So, but I'm not going to try to sell it to anyone that doesn't want it, but this book called Thinking in Destiny, I get 40% off. And so I sell them at my cost. They cost me $13.10. So if you decide you want to find out about reincarnation, and you too, Susan, and I'll even let old Richard have one of them for $13 and a dime. The camera operator, see? So you can find it, but it's over 1,000 pages. And some people can't even read it. It's because it's heavy-duty stuff. But to me, I've been studying it for 31 years. I can read it like a novel now. And I underline and mark, you know, but
I'm not sure it can dumb down enough. Was that your expression? Dumb down enough for me?
Well, see, the enlightened beings, right? It's hard, very difficult for them to dumb down enough that you and I can understand it.
Yeah, I think I would have that problem somehow.
But I think if we would like about shut down, I imagine.
I think we're probably getting close to that.
If I want you people to know, you sweet people to know, I've enjoyed visiting with you, and I'm glad you came out. And Connie, I didn't, you know, I was watching the first episode where you were interviewing Marty.
Yes.
Well, we know Marty.
Yeah.
And I called Jack, Black Jack Taylor, you know.
Yes.
And in fact, I stopped to see him yesterday. I took him the Courier, where the story is in the Courier, the Autumnal Courier, and I took him a copy yesterday morning. He came outside, and I didn't even go inside. And I gave him this, and he said, I figured because he has 2 or 3 children. But at any rate, we knew Marty, and so I watched most of it. I was surfing, and I saw it.
There we were.
and so I think that the principle of what you're trying to do is excellent. People should be more concerned about their fellow man and try to be less offensive and more caring and more sharing. And the liberal idea of government doing everything, no, you end up with a dictatorship, see? First, the left wing, the liberals, where the government becomes supreme, well, then it becomes more and more supreme. Finally, the government takes over, and you have socialism, which doesn't work in any nation, never has and never will. Then you go to a dictatorship. It's like communism, see? So this country is on the way to a dictatorship ultimately, unless some values are put back into government of honesty and truthfulness. But I want you girls to know that I've really enjoyed it, and Richard, thank you. And we'll see you sometime next trip.
Thank you, Connie. You picked an excellent person, Curly, for being with us and sharing, and you've given us a lot to think about.
Well, I've really enjoyed it.
Well, one thing about this show is that we all know that Fairfield is a wonderful place to live. I've lived here most of my life, and people go, don't you want to leave? And I go, it's a great place to live. Bring your kids up. And people that I've gone to school with come back here to bring their kids up here so they can be closer to grandparents. And even though we have a lot of diversity and we have a lot of interesting ideas, some that we've talked about today, the bottom line is Fairfield is a wonderful place to live and all be together and share our lives.
The world is getting smaller all the time, and to have so much of that right here, we're very lucky.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you
we
very
thank you a lot, Curly, for sharing, and maybe next time Georgette will come on the camera too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.